good? What's good? What's good? What's up, good people? Welcome to another episode of the Leader Set Trends podcast with your host, Aisha Thomas. Really excited to be here, talk to you about this topic, but make sure that if you have not yet, like this, share this, subscribe, that you do that, leave a review. Because again, the more that you do that, the more I can reach and connect with more leaders like yourself, right? So make sure that you do that. But today's topic I'm really excited about. I've been studying attachment theory. And some of you all might have heard of it, or utilize it from the lens of, relationships. But the interesting thing is it applies to leadership as well, because one of the things that I do is I always like to set the foundation to connect how our first leaders in our homes, in our communities, our friends, how they impacted and shaped how we show up as leaders today. And of course, we can grow and develop and transform into, whatever we choose to be. I consider myself in that transformational leadership side, and I have learned a lot that has helped me show up more effectively as a leader. But for some of you all out there, you might be still on that journey. I'm still learning things, right? We're always on a journey of growing and bettering ourselves as a leader. However, finding like this information about how attachment theory applies to leadership is so powerful. So you might be like, what is attachment theory, Aisha? What is it? So the way it's defined and shout out to, so I found this great information from David V. Drake. Shout out to you, David, for really doing a lot of work with attachment theory. So a lot of the pieces that I'm extracting is from him, but just to kind of give you guys an idea of how it's shaped and how it shows up. But again, if you want to know what it is, it really talks about how we have connected as our youth, when we were first born, our adolescence, that first few years of our lives, and how we were able to connect to our caregivers. And based on of that connection, that bond, how they were able to support us when we were stressed or when we cried and we needed someone to be there, how they responded to us and interacted to us, how that really impacts how we do relationships. The thing about leadership is we need to also, that ship that's there, relationship also has it, but doing relationships is extremely important as a leader, because we have to be able to connect with our team members. We need to be able to reach and connect with them constantly. And if we aren't understanding how the things we experience has impacted us, how can we truly build relationships? When we get to the segment of leadership in the news, we're going to talk about how a lack of relationships affected a leader's position. But I'll give you the technical definition. So the definition of attachment is an inborn system in the brain that evolves largely in the first 2 years of a child's life in ways that influence and organize motivational, emotional, and memory processes with respect to significant caregiving figures, right? So attachment theory, now again, it speaks to that infancy, how we were able to build those emotional, cognitive, and social skills. It says, as a result, their early experience, talk about infancy, in seeking to reach out for and connect with significant others, particular, can I say the word? Particular, all right, the particular person, there we go, bam, shortcut. Those words you find and you stumble upon, I mean, it is what it is, all right? Regardless of having a master's or any of that, there's certain words that still stump us, okay? Amen. All right, so your mother is typically the person that they look to, or that we tend to connect with on a regular basis in infancy, right? And of course, that looks different in different households, but that's the typical connection. In this process, the development of a felt and stable sense of a safe haven and a secure base are critical for the development of a secure attachment in children. Right. So when we say safe haven, what is that space and place? Who is that trusted caregiver that they could have went to when they feel anxious, when they sense danger, when they cry, when we needed that support? What was that safe haven? Right. And within that, the way that that's built and developed is from what they call cognitive communication. Right. So those nonverbal signs, because again, as if you're thinking about infancy, we're learning language. We're learning so many different things at that age. We're just soaking up all this knowledge, right? That allows us to utter that first word, mama, dada, right? It's helping us build those things. But it's also, again, allowing us to know like where to go when we want to feel safe, right? When those stressors kick in. I mean, think about it. In leadership, we're faced with so much stress. We're faced with so many different things. So being able to cling on to someone and have that support is super important. So who do we turn to, right? Who do I run to when I need love? I mean, who knows this song? Escape, shout out to you all. But anyway, but being able to connect to someone so you can have a healthy, secure attachment, right? What is that safe haven? It says over time, this attuned communication enables the child to develop the regulatory circuits in the brain that give the individual a source of resilience as he or she grows, right? Or they and them, right? As they grow. And the capacity for engagement with others is in empathetic relationship. So there's emotional intelligence that's built, is resiliency. It's being able to just, again, manage themselves, right? Tap into that hippocampus and all those good things in the brain that allows you to be secure. But if you don't have that, it does the opposite. And now it also talked about a secure base. So again, remember I said the development of a felt and stable base, stable sense of a safe haven and a secure base are critical for the development of a secure attachment. And we'll talk about the different attachment theories as we go on. So what is a secure base? It is the presence of a sufficient safe haven, and it provides a child with a sense of that secure base provides them with something that allows them to feel confident exploring the world, right? I want to see the world, what it's about, and feel open about it, right? And to which he or she, right, they and them, right, can return as needed as part as their ever widening circles. This is important in the of development or for development because, as researchers have noted, the more threatened an individual feels, the more primitive or regressed becomes the style of thinking and behaving. So now think about it again. I know we're talking about our youth, but how does this apply to leadership, right? It's just like fight, flight, or freeze. This really, like, again, this is the development part. Remember, I always share that in any training that I do about emotional intelligence, or just the development of us, that, you know, we are naturally in this space of, you know, fight, flight, or freeze. Our body are a self-preservation, you know, being. That's who we are. So our body is like, you know, has a mind of its own of, okay, even though I might be scared because I'm watching a scary movie, or I'm uncomfortable because I'm about to speak in front of a ton of people, the way your body responds physiologically, it's dependent on, it's not thinking like, oh, this is just for a presentation that Aisha is doing. It's responding just based off of, it doesn't know the specifics to it. It just knows that physiologically something's happening and this is connecting to like that fear side or that flight side or that free side. So we're just going to respond based off of that so we can preserve ourselves. So, and then on the other side, the most dominant part of the brain is the emotional center. And again, I always say it's beautiful how we are developed and we are naturally emotional. Remember, you are emotional. But again, if we're not learning those specific skills so we can learn how to balance, you know, the emotional side as well as the rational side and the thinking and the processing, the critical thinking side, which doesn't mature until you're in your 20s, right? If we don't have that support, what happens? The emotional side drives us. So we're making decisions solely off of emotions without, again, my son, he's doing some awesome behavioral therapy classes. And today it's interesting, right? Or whenever you listen to it, I'm saying today, but on his session that he did recently, they taught him how to think before they act, right? You know, pause. You know, I even have cards that we go through: pause, think, then act. And those things that even he's learning at 8 years old is going to benefit him into his adulthood, because a lot of us didn't learn, you know, pause, think, then act. A lot of us just act based off of how we feel without actually processing what we're thinking about while we're thinking about that, what's happened, and making the best decision possible so we can have a win-win situation. We just act, right? So all these things are so important when we're thinking about this attachment theory, and it's powerful information. And it also says a secure base reassures the child's need for familiarity, All these words, right? Preserving stress reducing behaviors and emboldens the child's need for exploratory and information seeking behavior, things that we need as leaders, right? Seek, right? Learn, get out there and connect with people. The strength that comes from having a reliable and resonant, secure base enables a child to feel both internally integrated and interpersonally connected to others as they move out into the world. This is powerful stuff. That's why I always say, right? A lot of us like try to say, okay, we're going to cancel the emotions. We're going to cancel this and cancel that. But we are big babies. You know, say we are big babies. And when I say big babies, is that again, we have to realize how much our childhood, what we experience in the home, how much that has affected how we show up in the world as leaders, even as followers. It has a tremendous effect. And by us understanding this a bit further or a bit more and getting the help that we need, the development that we need, heal, grow, transform, right? A lot of us are doing trauma-based leadership. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So the more that we can heal, grow, develop, identify what our blind spots are, where they came from, the root cause, and work through those things, the more you'll find yourself growing as a leader and connecting with your team members a lot more effectively. Right? It's a beautiful thing. It is, right? So again, we have, those aspects of that safe haven. Who's that caregiver that's trusted I can go to when I'm afraid, right? How do they teach me how to handle this? Right. And again, there could be some over reliance of that caregiver. But again, it all depends on that balance and that effectiveness that you got in the home. And then also realizing that our caregivers are also a lot of times functioning based off of their type of attachment theory, their attachment and what they experience. And if they didn't do the work, right, and it's nothing on them, but if they didn't recognize it, grow and develop and do the work applicable to get to the other side, it can affect their youth, their children. It can affect us. Right. So, and we're living in a time where development, growth, therapy, all these great things are on the front and center. So we might be the first generation that will develop more securely attached children. And that's a beautiful thing. All right. So you probably want to know, what are these 4 attachment theories? What are they? What are they? And of course, we have secure, we have avoidant, anxious, and disorganized. But before we get into that, have you liked this? All right. Did you share it to anybody? You're like, oh, this is good. I need to share it to somebody right now. I know a supervisor, I know a leader, I know a colleague that I had this conversation with. And I'm like, I'm sure. I feel like there's something that they need to work on. Right. And of course, we're not trying to, diagnose anyone or whatever, but please share this information. Again, subscribe to it, leave a review, make sure you are doing that ASAP, okay? ASAP. And as always, as I mentioned, if you need any support, as far as all of the trainings that I provide to take leaders to the next level, take staff to the next level, please make sure you reach out, info@aishathomas.org, but go to my website and get more details so we can set up that free consultation ASAP. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about these different attachment theories, right? It's powerful stuff. What are they, right? And what we're going to do is build on this conversation as we go throughout, the next few weeks. All right. So make sure you really are tapped in. Make sure you're tapped in. All right. So let's check out this attachment theory a little bit more so you can have an understand. So we talked about there's 4 main ones. We have secure, and secure is where we want to land. Secure is where we want to be. That's what we should be striving for. Let's be secure, right? So what you're looking at when you're talking about a secure attachment style, that's someone that's good with intimacy, right? When we think about intimacy, we're talking about that connection, those bonds, right? Right, that we need to make with people, our team members, those that we are supporting on a day-to-day basis. There's a level of self-sufficiency. I am self-sufficient. Right? I can navigate the day-to-day, the stressors, capable of trust. And that's important too. When you want to, pass on something to a team member or whomever, right? What is your trust level at? Positive view of self, confidence plays a lot into how we lead, how we manage on a day-to-day basis. So what does that look like? The next one, right, is avoidant. I'll tell you guys where I land. Okay. Where I land. But we'll dig into that later. Avoidant, right? I'm comfortable with intimacy, right? So those connections, those interpersonal relationships, getting close to people, right? They're uncomfortable with it. overly independent. Ooh, you know what? I'm going to just manage all these tasks. Even though I have 5 other team members, I have X amount of people on my staff. I got this. Those are the people that never ask for help. And the reality is we do need help sometimes. That's why we hired them a lot of times, right? We want to push this mission and vision. We want to get to the next level. We need to be able to what? Depend on people, right? Support, get the support we need. There's a balance we need to have of independence, right? And then also, I want to say dependence, but support can seem distant and cold. Imagine how, oh, I don't understand why people don't want to come and talk to me in my office. Or I don't know why they talk to me. Well, this might be the vibes that you're putting out there, positive view of self, right? So they have a positive view of their self. That's awesome, right? That confidence is up there, they're just out here like, I'm the best. But the reality is, even though you're awesome, there's some areas of development. All right. The next area is anxious. Now, I lived in this area for a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna be honest. I lived in the area of anxiousness for some time. So they seek excessive intimacy. So they want that connection. But the interesting thing is, like, when I read this, it's like I'm a little bit of everybody, because it's like I am more of a introvert. And I'm more of a person that like stays to themselves. But when there is a bond, there is a connection where we do connect, right? In an interpersonal relationship, it's like it feels good, right? But some people just they seek excessive intimacy, or they're constantly reaching for it, searching for it. And again, you have to be able to balance those moments where it's like, I got to focus, I got to grind, and the other side of it's time to connect, right? Seeks constant reassurance. They need to constantly hear, like, you're doing great. How am I doing? And like, there's always a concern that they may or may not be good enough as well. So there's always seeking for that reassurance, asking the same question. Are you sure? Has things changed? What's wrong with you? I just think that, well, you might have told them multiple times, but to them, they're constantly seeking that validation. Doesn't like to be alone, and a negative view of self, right? A negative view of self. And we're going to talk about why people live in each one of these areas. And then there's disorganized, right? Disorganized. And also just know that as I talk about it, we can bounce in, these areas here, these attachment style, we can bounce in one of these areas. So we don't always, sometimes if you are in a space or place where you are maybe navigating someone else that's anxious, you might automatically throw on the side of avoidant or disorganized. So just know that depending on the scenario, the type of environment that you're in, you might bounce into another one, right? That can happen, or it can evolve over time. And disorganized wants intimacy, but fears it. They fear it. It's a trust thing. Again, trust is huge. So they might I want to connect. I see these great people, but there might be like, can I trust you? Where did that come from? Right. We're going to, again, dig into that. Expects to be hurt. It's an expectation. You know what? Everybody hurts. You can't trust nobody. Everybody hurts people. So just imagine someone with that behavior. So they're there to themselves, but there's an expectation like, I can't trust them. You can't trust these people here. So you make sure you do this and that. And just imagine a leader developing you from that perspective, right? Or leading from the aspect of, I can't get too close to these team members because they're going to quit, or I can't get too close to them because of whatever, but there's an expectation of being hurt. Fears rejection, right? And again, that ties into the expect of hurt. What if I open up to these individuals, or what if I connect to these people and they just reject me anyway? Or they have this language where like, well, leaders tend to be, once you get to the top, you're alone anyway. And I like being there. But again, feeling or having that belongingness is important to us. We want to belong. We want to connect. So, but there's some people who are like, I don't want to be rejected, because they felt it so many times in their youth that it's an uncomfortable feeling. So they stay away from those bonds and connections because they don't want it to happen, or they wear this cloak of stay back, and they have a negative view of self as well. So those are the different aspects and the different areas of, this attachment style. And my question is, like, as I've been reading this information and you've been reviewing it or thinking about it and listening to it, what are your thoughts? Like, which one stands out to you? Which one is like, ooh, I think that's me. That stands out to me tremendously. There I go rhyming again. But you might be like, that really stands out to me. Which one, or where do you live in one of those houses? Are you secure? Are you avoidant? Are you anxious? Or are you disorganized? So to give you a little bit more perspective on it, right? Children who are seen as secure, again, generally had mothers or parents or caregivers who were allowed them to be free and autonomous, right? They were emotionally available, meaning the caregivers, and perceptive of and responsive to a child's needs, states and their signals. A securely attached child feels safe, understood, and confident, that most of the time that parent is a reliable source of nurture, protection, and meeting their needs. Again, in leadership, right? Because again, flip it on the other side. If you have a team member, they had this positive experience, they're going to look at that leader in the same way, not as a caregiver, but okay, their emotional intelligence is up to par. When they're in the workspace, they feel confident, they feel safe, they know how to navigate challenges. They know how to connect with other people. They feel protected. They know that, and again, the way that we engage with our team members, we can trigger some of these things. So when that team member comes to you, can they come to you? Do you make them feel safe? Do you create a safe environment for them? Are you a reliable source? Right? Are you meeting their needs professionally? But that's the perspective of that secure aspect as a leader, right? Now for the avoidance side, right, they generally had caregivers who were dismissing, emotionally unavailable, and or unresponsive, and perhaps even rejecting of attempts of proximity. As a result, these children tended to avoid dependence by pursuing self-reliance and discomfort with closeness, and therefore preserve distance and avoid their needs by using the activating strategies. Again, that dependent side, right? I got it. I don't want to get too close to someone, right? Because again, they lived in that perspective where it's like, they were dismissed. They didn't have emotionally available caregivers, right? They didn't respond to their calls or their needs. And there's a bit of rejection that happens. So now they have self-reliance. I got myself. I'm going to take care of myself. I have me. I am good. Now, how does that show up in leadership? Just imagine a leader, they're not connecting. I got this, there's like this discomfort, like, okay, I don't want to go to the after work event, or they don't maybe push to do too many events where it's team building, right? There's just a level of distance that they keep. That's the avoidant. Now, anxious, they had caregivers who were preoccupied, inconsistently available, perceptive, and responsive. They were enmeshed and entangled and frequently imposing their state, right? Meaning that depending on what they're dealing with that day, it might be just a whole nother experience. As a result, that child tended to manage their uncertainty and independence by pursuing closeness and protection, and manage their anxiety about the availability of and their intrinsic value to significant others by using hyper-activating strategies. So now that this is the opposite end, where they pursue closeness, right? They're just in their face all the time. They just want it. It says they manage their anxiety about availability of and their intrinsic value to significant others by using hyper-activating strategies. They're going to find some way to get that attention, right? How does that show up for a leader, or how does that show up on the other side if that's a team member? And again, we have to think about how are we showing up as leaders? Are we the ones that are always preoccupied, they don't have time, we're not available, we lack responsiveness? I mean, the reality is those that we are supporting or supporting us, they're navigating some real life things, right? And our effectiveness as leaders, we can learn so much by understanding, like, this could be the shape of my staff. So what can I do to make sure that I live and I support them in the secure area? But also on the flip side, right, for us, we have to be aware of when we need to go work on these things as well, so we can try to live as well in the secure side as individuals. Now, lastly, disorganized generally had caregivers who were frightening and frightened, right? Disorienting, disorienting. So again, if I use an example of, maybe someone lived in an abusive household. So you might have someone that might have been the abuser or someone that is the abused. So when you say frightening and frightened, right? Or someone could live in both areas. Disorienting and alarming. As a result, these children tended to simultaneously, right? My goodness, these words today, can't speak, approach their caregiver for security and avoid her or him for safety, resulting in a conflicted or even disassociated state, right? And this is actually the least common attachment pattern, but it happens. They're so like wishy-washy type of experience, like they're disorganized. It's probably all over the place. All over the place. You might not be able to understand them a little bit more or understand them as much. So to give you a perspective on this or a visual of it, I want to take you into what that looks like. What does that person look like as far as that secure, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, right? So secure, self-assured, direct, responsive. Then you have anxious, preoccupied, right? Self-doubting. They're anxious, they're sensitive. Avoidant, I'm gonna avoid this. Dismissive, self-reliant, distant. And disorganized, just fearful. I don't know. I'm just, again, they're in that fright mode all the time. They might be self-sabotaging, unpredictable, isolated. So they might constantly have that play in their mind. Like, I don't know if I can trust them. It's always like, when is the ball going to drop? There's something, things might be going good, but they find a way to flip it. They have a great opportunity in front of them, but they find a way to just self-sabotage it. This is where the disorganized lives. So I really want you to sit and ask yourself, how does this show up for me as a leader? Because we have to first assess ourselves, right? Before we get into other people and how they show up, how does this show up for me? Where do you think that you're living or what's connected to you? And of course, if you need additional support, please utilize the resources that you have around you, right? Because again, our goal is to be in the secure side and really start embedding those tools and strategies so we can live on the more secure side. That is extremely important. So how does that look? I love this baby. She's so cute, right? So if you look at where the secure side is, preoccupied, avoidant, fearful, and again, preoccupied is that anxious, fearful is disorganized. Secure, low avoidance, low anxiety. But avoidant, right? Avoidant, they have low anxiety, but high avoidance. What are they avoiding? What interaction are they avoiding? What engagement are they avoiding? And how does that affect you as a leader? Then you have on the other side, right? That disorganized, high anxiety and high avoidance. And I always think about these things that we navigate from a health perspective. How does that affect the body, the brain, how they show up? We talk about the external, but internally, there's so many things happening when you have high anxiety and high avoidance. Again, from the outside, we might think like, what's up with that person? But we don't even realize it's so much deep rooted. There's a lot of deep rooted things they're navigating. And on the other side, low avoidance, right? For preoccupied, AKA anxious, low avoidance and high anxiety, right? So they might avoid because again, these are the individuals that are like, I want intimacy, I want connection, I want interpersonal relationships, but there's a level of anxiety there too, right? Because what happens when they don't get it? How does that make that person feel when they don't get it? Am I good enough? What's wrong? Is something, did I do something? Right? They might even find themselves trying to prove themselves or doing things just so they can get, again, that hyperactivity, get that attention. Because I just need to be around people. I want them to be around me. So where do you live? Why do you live there? And how can you get the support to get to the other side of that? Because it's important for us to know these things, leaders. It really is. And although we might be quick to say, okay, we might have team members like that, I want us to assess ourselves to make sure that we are doing the work to be more on the secure side. To be more on the secure side. So, you might be like, well, what can I do? What can I start working on? I just want to give you some final bits of data on this, right? And then make sure you come back, because next time we're going to be talking about it from the follower's perspective. How does this look like on the person that's the follower, the staff, the team member, the person that's following your lead, right? So it's interesting because there's been some studies done, and the studies have said that transformational and charismatic leadership, they were related to the secure attachment style. So those, we hear about all the different type of leadership styles, right? I live in the transformational side. So even though I might have navigated some, disorganization or some anxiousness, I live on the transformational side, but that is attributed to the therapy and the work that I put in within myself personally to grow and develop. And now it's showing up on the other side. But those two leadership styles, right? They live more in that secure attachment, right? They're likely to have trusting relationships with others, as well as positive view of themselves, compared to insecure leaders, such as who? Laissez-faire. Those are those hands-off leaders. They call them, that's where lazy comes from. But laissez-faire, the ones that are really, really hands-off. But why is that? They say they are related positively and with dismissing, right, attachment style, right? Leaders who have a hard time trusting others but feel good about themselves may have little faith in their subordinates' abilities and skills. They're like, I trust me more than I trust them. Or, or they're just hands off, if they got it, and just sit back like, that's their way of avoiding that connection, right? So you're not going to see too much of that anxious side. Those people like, I don't want the attention. No, they tend to like, no, I'm good over here. They may not value subordinates, their input, or involve them in decisions, which may result in low morale. And I know there's some other leadership styles that's more hands off, or, the ones that are more like direct. So you're looking at those ones that we've all been around that feel more on the negative side or the uncomfortable side. Those are the ones that are living in that attachment style. So you might be seeing a bit of that avoidant, anxious, or even disorganized that's happening there. But definitely more of that avoidant or disorganized. So if you were to assess your leadership style, where are you at? And just know that for any leader that's watching this, you might be a leader in development and growth. You might be a leader that's, in the process of, again, developing. You might be a new leader. And I definitely have been the hands-off leader. I've definitely been maybe the avoidant leader. I've been the anxious leader. I've been through a lot of these phases, or a little bit of them all. It's probably lived more on the disorganized side. But the work I put in, when I got that feedback from my team, allowed me to understand what I needed to work on, that it was time. And the interesting thing is to really test to see where you live is during stressful times, because again, these attachment styles are really connected to, okay, when I needed support, when I fell, when I was, dealing with the ups and downs, who was that caregiver that was there to support me so I can learn these tools of emotional intelligence and security and know how to explore the world and what to dodge and whatnot, right? Remember, attachment theory speaks to what happens for infants emotionally, cognitively, and socially as a result of their early experience in seeking to reach out for and connect with significant others. Those caregivers, our first leaders, really shape how we see the world and connect with others. And again, stress, that is very revealing. How do you show up when it's stressful? Things might be good right now, leaders, but when it's stressful, how are you showing up for your team? What does that look like? Right? Are you pulling back? Are you diving in? What does that look like? So one of the things you really want to do is assess yourself when you go through stressful times. Assess that. What does that look like? How have you responded? Really assess yourself. And that's why I always talk about self-assessment at the end of the week, the day, doing that on a regular basis, because you can ask yourself that key question. How did I show up for my team this week? How did I show up for myself? What were the ups and downs? Did you ask for feedback? What was the feedback that you heard a lot of? Right? Or what are you seeing happening around you? And how are you showing up? Right? Are you triggering some things because you might be distant? because that's the reality too. And again, it's not our responsibility to address these things, because again, we want individuals to pursue their own growth and development. But the reality is, we want to be leaders that show people more security. That might have been the first security that, someone has felt, but we want to live on that side. So assess yourself the next time you are in a stressful season in the workplace. Maybe you're going through that now, but how are you showing up? Are you less interactive? Are you checking in with people? How are you navigating the day to day as you're navigating a stressful time? Are you taking on all the roles and responsibilities? Are you delegating? Right? When someone wants to connect with you, are you unavailable or are you available? Are you just like, okay, no, something's wrong. No one wants to connect with me. Something must be wrong with me. What does that look like for you? And really start identifying what those things are. And then how are those behaviors affecting, of course, you, and also affecting your team? Take inventory on that. Really, really do. Because again, before we can go and start creating secure leadership, or excuse me, creating a safe haven for others, we have to understand ourselves first, right? We have to do that. So once we understand ourselves, where we live, now we can start working towards being or directing ourselves to that safe and secure place, because our team members are looking to us for that support, right? They're looking for us for that connection. Statistics say, as the last study, that about around 50% of children are securely attached. They're in that secure part, but it's been a decrease over some years. It used to be a higher amount. And we can say that, there's been so many different things that's happened within the household that has shaped the home. And that's why you probably are navigating children who are living in the other attachment styles. So that's so important, that these are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. These are going to be the ones, like our children, right? Our loved ones, those babies and those, wonderful, nieces and nephews we get to visit and so on. Some of us have cousins that are young. They're the future leaders, and they're going to be the ones who shape the organizations and societies. A lot of the things that this generation is going through, Gen Zers, right? You have these new generation that's coming up, but a lot of them are dealing with a lot of mental health issues, a lot of things that they're navigating. But if you look at the makeup and the shape of their parents, right, went through recessions and went through so many different things, that has a lot to do with how they're showing up today. And if you couple it with social media and all those different things, man, a lot of people are like, man, what's up with this generation? But it all starts in the home. It also starts with how society and culture is today. And the more that we can start to understand how the outside world affects the inside of us, right, it will allow us to have a little bit of more empathy, understanding, so we can start to embed belongingness in our workplaces. So what stood out to you today from that, right? Make sure you comment, right? Make sure you message me. Make sure you comment, and make sure, again, you share. And don't forget to subscribe. I told you I did again. All right. So before we transition, what are we about to do? Leadership in the news. This is our new segment. What is leadership in the news? It's when we look at real life situations that's happening in the world and what we can learn from them. What can we learn from these scenarios? All right. So one of the ones that I'm looking at currently is from GameStop, right? You know about GameStop. What y'all know about GameStop? So what's happening is, the question is that I pose on my Instagram, right? I like to throw these things out there. What is the right leadership fit? Why? Because recently GameStop released a leader. They got rid of them, or released them, excuse me, as a mode of accountability. Right. So according to the CNBC article, the reason why is because they said that he was not a right fit for the culture. He wasn't a culture fit. And we want to make sure that the culture that we are creating are healthy and positive. And they said he was too hands off. I instantly think laissez-faire. I'm thinking like, was this like a avoidance style, disorganized? Why were they hands off? Right? I love this language, right? Because again, we can connect it in some kind of way. And of course, there's so much more that we have to learn about the person to understand this. But these things, these buzzwords or these things connect to what we just talked about. So an alleged email that went out to the staff stated everyone in the organization must become even more hands-on and embrace a heightened level of accountability for results. And regardless of what organization, company that you work for, again, I always say they have a right to set the expectations, what they're looking for, as far as a leader or staff. So they put a message out there. Everyone needs to be hands-on, right? Accountability, or again, accountability is going to follow because of course, there's accountability when someone isn't executing. So the important thing is to making sure that as leaders that we are doing a pre-assessment, we're collecting the data before we analyze and then apply what the method of disciplinary actions or accountability is going to be, right? But the question is, are these things that we're thinking about when we're interviewing, when we're assessing and vetting potential leaders and staff? A lot of the questions that have been asked in the past have solely been about IQ, skills, and abilities, but how about those attributes, right? What about those questions that ask them about, okay, how were you able to navigate, COVID-19 and what were the wellness initiatives that you had, or what do you think kind of wellness initiatives do you think that organizations need to embed? How are you learning about that leader or that staff member a little bit more deeper than just their skills and abilities, just the IQ things? We need to get to the EQ side. We need to learn a little bit more about the individual just to understand, because again, because GameStop is looking to really transform their organization, but they need to know this. They need a certain type of leader to do that. And even the new leader that they hired, they are offering a transformation bonus. I was like, I didn't even know this existed, right? But it's beautiful. It's good to know that. And of course, I never heard the term transformation bonus, but of course there are perks to be able to transform a team, an organization, and so on. So what is your pre-assessment? What are you thinking about when you're thinking like, okay, I need a leader to come in? Right? I need them to have this type of experience, but I also need them to have these certain attributes. Then again, once they're on board, is collecting the data. Now that they're here, document. What is your feedback and assessment process where you're still looking for these things, not just the IQ, but the EQ, their attributes? How are they showing up? How are they hands-on? Are they hands-off? And when you are seeing that they're hands-on by the first 30 days, how are you addressing it? What is the progression in developing that individual, or even, again, the disciplinary actions? So document. And then again, analyze that data. Once you have documented and assessed it, now what is the accountability measures if you don't see a change? What is your process? If any or all of those needs aren't met, what does that look like for you? So I was thinking about, what is the area of concern? Has there been progressive accountability or documentation? Did they have an opportunity to remedy? And of course, I always say any organization, company, business, by all means can shape their accountability measures however they choose to. But are we really giving our leaders a chance to grow and develop? Because again, you have that leader coming in and maybe, they think they're supposed to show up one way, or they're navigating one of these different attachment styles, or they're just navigating who knows what. And they need time to progress. I was one of those leaders, and I'm grateful for the leaders that took me under their wings, and really helped me become better. And those team members that were strong enough, I won't even say strong enough, but brave enough to give me feedback, right? And open enough, because having those conversations can be uncomfortable. So there's a level of bravery and courage to do it because it's going to benefit me. We want to always look at feedback as an opportunity for someone to grow versus them taking those same behaviors into the next company and organization. Do they have an opportunity to remedy it? Is the feedback and tools not being applied? Why? Right? Are you speaking their language? And what accountability method is best if that's needed? So it's not an instant like, you're out of here, but really trying to look at it from a perspective of growth and development, right? So what is that right leadership fit for you? Do you think how they handled this situation was effective? He only been there for a year, but a year can be telling for an individual. It really can. But I'm interested to know, was there progressive growth and development? And we have to take the accountability as leaders if we don't take time to grow and develop our team members. All right. So check that story out. Comment and ask yourself, like, okay, where do I land as far as those type of things? But as always, I thank you guys for tapping in. As always, I appreciate you all. You all are amazing. I'm going to get into, again, attachment theory and how that looks for followers, staff, those that are following our lead, because that's important too. And now how we can create more secure styles. But we need to first go back and assess me, myself, and I, because leadership starts with self-leadership first, right? So take this time, the next 7 days, and assess yourself, or even go back and think about that stressful time and how you handle it as a leader. And always, what's the solution? What tools do you need to get to the other side of it? And if you need that support, as always, reach out to me. My website, aishathomas.org. Follow me on social media at Miss Aisha Thomas, right? Make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening to this audibly, make sure you watch the virtual video one. All right, that's available on my YouTube. Just search for Aisha Thomas Uno One, right? And as always, I appreciate you all. And as I always say, individuals don't typically quit the organization. They typically quit the leader. And that's why you need leadership development. All right, get at your girl. You guys have an amazing, amazing week. And I'll catch you guys for the next episode. Bye.